Okay, so with the videos too, what I upload onto YouTube is usually all uncut. So, so even what we're talking about now, our intro stuff, before I actually start the official podcast,
great.
this
All the really
goes
interesting
online.
stuff.
Yeah, sometimes it's occasionally though, if something goes to shit, I'll press pause. So then there's a little bit of a cut and then it starts again, which happened on one that I did earlier on today where, just the internet played up.
Okay.
And because it's school holidays at the moment while we're recording this, and my daughter's home, I'm just got to be careful that she jumps onto YouTube and starts watching movies and doing other things and buggers up the internet. So if if all of a sudden you see me picking up my phone and I'm doing this furiously, that means I'm trying to tell them to get off the internet. So
you're not texting me madly, you're texting your daughter.
Yeah, but that's right. I've told them I'm going to be doing a podcast. Please be quiet. I've turned the dryer off. Everything is really good. So I'm going to do my intro and we'll take it from there. Here we go. Hi, I'm Tyson Franklin, and welcome to this week's episode of the Podiatry Legends podcast. Podcast is designed to help you feel, see, and think differently about the podiatry profession. Before I introduce my guest, give a shout out to the sponsor of today's podcast, which is Podium, Podium. If you go /Podiatry Legends, they have a page set up there that you can ask them some questions, but it's all about getting more Google reviews and connecting better with your patients. So if you feel you need more Google reviews, which everybody does, go there, check it out, podium.com/podiatry legends. So today I have Dr. Nick Fuller, who is not a podiatrist, but he is a legend. And he's a globally recognized obesity expert from the University of Sydney and Royal Prince Alfred Hospital. He has degrees in, you got to listen to this, physiology, nutrition and dietetics, and a doctorate in obesity and weight management. And as podiatrists, we all understand how weight affects your feet, which is why Dr. Nick Fuller is on here today. So Nick, how are you doing today?
Very well, Tyson. Thanks very much for having me on the show. Very kind intro.
And I want to thank you for reaching out to me in the first place, which it took 2 emails because the first one, I apologize. I ignored. I didn't ignore it. It sort of came. And that's the thing with emails, I think is a really important point for people. When you send an email to someone, if they do not respond, it doesn't mean they're not interested. It just means another 150 emails may have turned up in the inbox that particular day. So I do apologize.
Very true. That's exactly what happens.
So where did it start? Well, just get back in your background a little bit. How did it all get started with you? Now, you've done your doctorate in obesity and weight management, but what was the beginning part? What really kicked it off?
Yeah, so believe it or not, it did start in the corporate world and giving the advice to people that appear on those weight loss shows that we love to talk about. Now, I guess what I was seeing, what we were prescribing, I knew wasn't right for these people long term. It was purely for visual, it's mass media, it's getting people's attention, big weight loss, weighing in and supposedly helping people, but we weren't helping them long term. And I wanted to go back to a clinical setting, academic setting, and actually understand what was happening within these people's bodies when they were going through weight loss journeys. Because look, after all, diets have been around ever since this obesity epidemic took off. But guess what? They've only contributed to the very problem they proclaim to solve. We know now that diets, this intentional weight loss cycling is accelerating a person's weight gain, and you're worse off signing up to that new fad because you will lose weight. And as we've shown with our research and science, you go back to your start point, you actually end up going up a little bit heavier. You drive your set point up, or your body weight you're most comfortable at over a period of time. It just goes up and up and up. So instead of putting on the 0.5 to 1 kilo every year, you end up putting on the 1.5 to 2 kilos every year. So I ended up back studying again, University of Sydney.
If I can just go back one step. So you were in a corporate world. Were you working on one of those TV shows?
Yes. So working on...
we're not going to mention any names because most people probably know what the show was. So you were working on or shows, you were working in the background on those shows, helping people get massive weight loss for a visual effect for TV.
Yeah. So luckily, the one that I was mainly working on was with families. So it was still the same sort of thing. We were looking for weight loss, but we were basically prescribing nutritional lifestyle advice for these people appearing on the shows. And yes, as you just described, I mean, a lot of it, there's a lot of other programs that have come out, continue to come out for that I guess, weight loss that we all want. And it gets us, I guess, it gets our attention and we tune in. Yeah, so that sort of drove me back from, I guess, corporate work, workplace health, into the academic setting, research, science again.
So at that point, did you have your degree as a dietitian and
That's right.
in physiology?
That's right.
Was physiology. So that was the original degrees that you got.
Yeah.
Then you worked in the corporate world, and then you saw a dramatic flaw in what was happening.
Yes.
I went, I need to make a change here.
Yes, exactly. And I was working then as a clinician with patients, and working in a research setting, and started to, I guess, establish what was going on, and trying to paint a better picture of what weight management should look like and what people should be doing. So, I've sort of researched everything from simple nutritional programs, dietary interventions, through to devices and surgery. But most importantly, I guess my passion is about preventing weight regain, helping people form habits, because most people are struggling with their weight these days, and it doesn't matter what sort of healthcare professional you are, you're going to be seeing patients, struggling with their weight. And if you don't treat that and know how to deal with that conversation when it comes up, and it should come up, you're potentially going to lead them to something that will worsen their health.
So when you see these charts and it's got like the BMI, body mass index, and they'll say a certain people, certain height should weigh a certain amount, and some people get a bit paranoid with all that. They'll look at their height and they'll look at their weight and they go, "Oh, it says that I'm overweight," and that they are trying to lose weight when they probably shouldn't be, because they're actually really healthy at the body composition that they are.
Yeah, this is a good point. And we are finding this with women in particular. They actually are dieting themselves into overweight and or obesity. So they might not have a weight problem to start with. This peer pressure, mass marketing, it's targeting women. It's convincing them that they should do something about their weight. They sign up to that next diet, weight loss program, lose, but as we explained, you end up going back to a higher start point. So that is particularly relevant for women. They are dieting themselves heavier and they don't often have a problem to start with. But us men, unfortunately, Tyson, we don't tend to do anything until we get a serious health scare. It might be, we might be lucky to get through that heart attack or whatever it is, but then we tend to overhaul our lifestyle. We don't typically diet men. And that's why the dieting industry target women, because they're the ones signing up repetitively for actually up to 5 times every year. And they're often going back to the same program because they think they failed due to a lack of willpower, but they're actually failing, which we'll get on to talk about, due to their biology, what's actually happening within their body when they lose the weight. And when I talk about, dieting, accelerating weight gain, one of the most fascinating studies comes from this large data set internationally, looking at twins, and more than 4,000 sets of twins. And basically they follow these sets of twins up, and the twin that had been dieting throughout their lifetime was always heavier than the one that hadn't. So what they found was that twin had just dieted themselves heavier and heavier and heavier. So it's obviously independent of genetic factors. Yeah.
So you're saying that people are dieting the wrong way, and because they're dieting the wrong way, because I have read that once fat cells are produced, even when you lose weight, all you're doing is really shrinking down the size of the fat cell. You're not really getting rid of the fat cell, and therefore the weight can come on a lot faster, because if you're doing everything wrong again, you can easily increase them again. So the weight comes on quick and then they multiply.
So what's happening in our body when we lose weight?
Excuse my ignorance too.
No. It's there's so many different factors going on, and this is what people don't understand, and this is what we're trying to educate them on, and this is a large part of the work that I do. I work at an academic setting, University of Sydney, RPA Hospital. We are Australia's largest weight management service. We see thousands of patients every month, trying to help them with their weight loss journey. And in many cases, they don't just have a weight problem, they've got metabolic disease. They might have type 2 diabetes, heart disease, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, but then all of those other problems like back problems, feet problems, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So, we are at the forefront of science. We know what happens within a person's body because we are researching them. A lot of these people that come through, they are in fact human guinea pigs because we collect samples of them. But to go back to what you were describing, yes, there are a range of factors going on. When you lose weight, for example, your metabolism goes down, your appetite hormones go up, the amount of fat to carbohydrate, the RQ changes within your body, your thyroid function suppressed, your adrenal gland function changes to pump out more cortisol. Basically, your body starts working differently. And when it starts working differently, it's basically shutting down. And when it shuts down, it's just going to see you go back to your start point. It's doing that in order to survive.
Okay.
It doesn't know any better.
So so your body goes into, when you're not eating the right amount of food, your body is actually going into survival mode.
Yep.
And then it's almost going back to like caveman times, that once the food is there, your body's going, we need to store as much of this as we can because we don't know the next time you're going to starve yourself.
Exactly
Also,
right. That is
massive spike.
definitely, exactly as you just described, we would go long periods of time without food. When it was available, we would gorge. We would go for those, foods high in sugar, high in fat, and store it. And our body learnt to store that energy, store that fat. So, in the modern day environment, food's everywhere. We have a hard time saying no. It's one of the reasons why our weight goes up. But then what happens? The weight goes up and we react by dieting. We want the quick fix. We want the weight to come off quickly. But all that does is, that's another reason why your weight goes up quicker than it should be as well. So it's actually one of the contributing factors to the obesity epidemic. And it's because of those factors just explained, where your body's shutting down because it's doing that in order to survive. It doesn't know any better. Unfortunately, it's protecting us in a way that we don't want it to.
Yeah. Is that also when you'll hear some people say that when they're actually carrying extra weight, they go, this may sound funny, but I'm actually happy. Yeah. Some people will say, I feel happy when I'm actually carrying a few extra kilos. I feel happy. And when I actually lose weight, I'm not as happy as what I was. So is that how your body actually reacts to the weight loss and weight gain as well?
Yeah, look, there's many people that do carry a few excess kilos, and you alluded to this at the start, the
I thought you were about
BMI.
to say, and you allude to me. Yeah.
No. You look very fit and strong. But there are people that carry extra kilos that are still metabolically healthy.
Yeah.
And their body's still working perfectly fine. They're active, they're eating well, but their BMI or their set point is just programmed a little bit higher than, say, Joe or Joanne down the road. Now, that's fine. That's why BMI is not the be all and end all. It also doesn't take into consideration, as you know, a person's muscle mass. That's why athletes tend to have high BMIs. So we use waist circumference as a better indication of risk. So, putting the tape measure around it and seeing whether you're at high risk or not, because that also determines how much visceral fat you have and how much fat surrounds the organs, preventing them from working properly. But yes, getting back to that point, you will have people that are carrying a few extra kilos and they will be happy. And that's why there shouldn't be this social pressure, a norm to try and conform to what is a healthy BMI. What we're trying to do with our work and this interval weight loss program is basically help people not only lose a few kilos, but importantly keep them off. So that might mean 10 kilos for someone when they want to lose 15, but getting 10 off and keeping that off, that's great.
Okay, so obviously we know, like, as podiatrists, and I had someone on the podcast, Dr. Paul Butterworth, who did his PhD, but he actually did his PhD on obesity and heel pain.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember him talking about, yes, direct correlation between obesity and heel pain, which we probably all knew, but he was talking about when it comes to treating that heel pain, first, you've got to talk with the patient about the weight problem. Absolutely. Before you even look at the feet, because there's so many other things actually going on, which I think with what you're doing, which is why getting you on this podcast, I think was really, really important to get podiatrists thinking more than just the foot problem, thinking of the patient as an overall person and how else can we help them or direct them.
Definitely. This is the most important thing. Like when we see patients, we want to help them long term. We want to treat their underlying causes. And if you want to retain that patient, you've got to address the root cause. Now, in most instances, we see it time and time in our clinics, joint, heel pain. But yeah, feet are often one of those points of reference. And what does it start with? It starts with their weight. So you have to be able to bring that conversation up. And it might be something as simple as getting an idea of what their weight is and helping them with that, talking about it, but, asking them what, well, discussing what could be done, or talking about the science of weight loss, because that's often a fun way of bringing it up without stigmatizing it and saying to that patient, you need to lose weight.
Yeah.
And I can talk about how you can do that. We'll get to that.
Yeah, that'd be really, I think if you could give some helpful tips to anybody on how they can communicate this with their patients more eloquently than saying, have you thought about losing weight?
Exactly.
Would be really, really helpful.
Yeah, and we'll definitely do that, because like you said, if you don't actually address the weight, what's going to happen is you might get a short-term fix from the treatment of that heel pain, whatever you're doing to manage it. But then you're going to potentially lose that patient because they're going to think that you didn't actually help or treat the problem. So you've got to think of a longer term and bigger picture. You helping them with the root cause is actually going to help retain that patient long term, because not only we fix it potentially short term, but you're going to be able to fix it long term. So they'll keep coming back to you and you'll manage it. So look, you're right. And this is why this conversation needs to be had with healthcare professionals across the spectrum, including podiatrists. Weight is often the number one underlying issue as to why that person's presenting to you with that condition.
Okay, and you've got a website set up, intervalweightloss.com.au. So just want to get that in now, in case we forget to mention it at the end, that people can jump on there, learn a lot more about what you do. What else is on the website?
Yeah, so a lot of the work, I mean, I've been at the University of Sydney now for nearly 15 years, and it's, I guess, a part of it is translating what we do. So it's not just stuck in academic science.
Yeah.
I do write that information up into, books, for example, the Interval Weight Loss for Life book.
So you've got 3 books. Have these books come about since you did your doctorate, or had you written one beforehand?
No, so since then, obviously, it's been a work in progress where I'm working with patients, understanding the science, understanding how the program works and how it should be best applied. And then after completing that, I started to write that up in the form of books, because I realized that people that need the help, need to be able to understand that information in an easy to digest format. So that's where the sort of series of books came from. And then last year...
Can you hold that book back up again and read out the title?
Interval Weight Loss for Life. I'll have to get this over to you, Tyson.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll
get this. What I'm going to do also, I'm going to do a screenshot here.
I'm going to get this in the
so
post.
Hold that book up there. Hold that book up. I'm going to do a screenshot.
All right.
I'll post that later on today and
Excellent.
just say to people, oh, by the way, this is who I spoke to. This is going to be an upcoming episode, which I think I'm going to move this episode ahead of schedule. As I told you before, it probably wouldn't come out till late March, but I think I'm going to push this ahead because it's really, really important.
Especially this time of the year.
Yes.
This is when we can capture patients and prevent them following unevidence-based care. Going back to what you also mentioned, like a lot of the information we follow is not healthy, it's not sustainable. We can all cut out foods and food groups for short periods of time, but eventually one of those evolutionary desires or biological, physiological responses that kicks into gear is our desire to go and reach for those foods we're cutting out. They might be the ones naturally high in sugar and or fat, but we just end up binging on them and we go back to our old ways.
Yeah,
I'm
a terrible binger.
Yeah, well, that's why we can only follow things for 4 to 12 weeks. We can only cut it out for anywhere between that window. That's again what science is showing. So it's about, I guess this program not only explaining to a person what is happening within your body when you're losing weight and why you're failing long term. But then secondly, to equip them with what is 6 steps to long-term weight loss success to help them form habits, so that it's not just one of those programs where you do the all or nothing, lose a bit of weight short term and go back to your old ways. So it's sort of equipping you with the information that you need for good health, and long-term weight management, and breaking it down into 6 tips. So there is a series of books, like you mentioned, some go into more of the theory, some go into more of the practical application. And that's why we now have the online program, so that you can be accountable to yourself. You don't need to be seeing healthcare professionals in a face-to-face clinic. So for instance, if I present to you, Tyson, I've got the heel pain, we're talking about weight. Now, what you could be talking to me about is, do you know that when you lose weight, well, the reason why we fail is because we see that decrease in metabolism. Our body stops burning as many calories as it used to.
Yeah.
Did you know that our appetite hormones actually go up, telling us to eat more? Did you know your thyroid function stops working as well? And without thyroid stimulating hormone, well, your metabolism plummets. So bringing those things up in a light and entertaining way can often get a person's attention. And that's even what we do with our patients. We basically say, well, look, the reason why people fail, and look, you could even say, hey, I was listening to Tyson's Podiatry Legends podcast, and this is what they were talking about. But bringing up the science so that people realize that, okay, this is not just about, hey, you need to go and lose weight, but, well, maybe you haven't lost weight in the past because of, the program you'd followed, but more importantly, understanding why you have failed, and then guiding them towards evidence-based care.
So for a podiatrist in their clinic, they've got the patient in front of them. You're saying this is the type of conversation that they should be having, and then also following up with the patient. How do they guide the patient along this journey? Should they be referring them to a dietitian, or would you say, oh no, not all dietitians are equal? What's the next step? Because I know some podiatrists. I know some podiatrists that are right into nutrition. Got a good friend who's right into nutrition, but I've had other people get a little bit concerned about, or who are we to be offering this type of advice? Are we stepping outside of our field too much?
Yeah. Well, look, if you have the skill set and the qualifications, of course, there are many podiatrists that are also qualified dietitians, and they're very much providing a holistic or more comprehensive range of care. But in the instance you're treating that patient presenting to you for podiatry-related issue, this is where you can be talking to them about the interval weight loss program. Because if people come to you, they're going to, well, firstly, you can bring up weight in an indirect way by saying, hey, the heel pain could be related to in most instances, heel pain can be related to weight. And I was listening to this fascinating podcast the other day, whatever it might be. Or
tell your patients all about this episode.
Yes. Yeah. Or I might have been reading that interval weight loss book or series of books on the science behind weight loss. And this is why we fail. And explaining the drop in metabolism, the appetite hormones, because then what that does is then it says to people, oh, hang on. So that is why I've been failing. And then you can tie in the conversation on, if you want to follow some evidence-based care, you can, be following this program where there are 6 simple steps. The other thing, what we do is there's a great report that comes out every year from the US. It's just been released again. Basically, they look at all these diets we talk about and they apply an objective scoring matrix. And all the ones we keep talking about, the ketos, the intermittent fasting, all of these diets, they're the ones appearing down the bottom. They don't have the science to back up their bold claims. So it's just, I guess it becomes this mass momentum. We see instant gratification, then someone else will talk about it, someone else will talk about it. But when you follow those people up long term, they've put the weight back on. And when these scientists, leading experts across the US, get together and review the science behind each of these diets, all of the popular ones we're talking about appear down the bottom. The ones that are at the top, well, that's the Mediterranean eating style, which is part of this interval weight loss program. So you don't need to be referring them to another healthcare professional, because in many instances like this, you have all of the tools online where people can be accountable with the right information.
So you're saying like podiatrists could have copies of those books in their clinic. They could sell them that way, or give them
Yeah,
to patients at a
give them to
point of
patients.
treatment.
Tell them to go to
the website.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Tell them to go to the library and loan it if they want to. I mean, it's available everywhere. You can be giving them copies in the practice. It's another good option. And then if they want to follow in online, many people love to have, that sort of access in the palm of their hand.
Yeah.
You can follow it as the app, the Interval Weight Loss Program, by going to the intervalweightloss.com site and following the steps. So people just need to have that conversation with you. Okay.
So it all starts with the conversation. Initially, it's don't sit back, have a patient in front of you that you obviously know has weight issues. You obviously know it could be related to the presenting problem, whether it's lower back, knee, ankles, heel pain. So it's not ignoring, it's not ignoring the elephant in the room. And I don't mean elephant as in size, but it's just talk about something that you probably should be talking about.
Definitely just bringing it up in conversation, but doing it like I guess I've suggested in a way that is indirect. It's sort of referring to it as third person, saying, often we'll go back to the heel pain. Heel pain can be related to weight. And again, the fascinating new research shows that we're not losing weight because of our biology. Our body fights itself. You can talk about that hunter-gatherer story where metabolism's decreasing. It's quite a fun story. Patients, their ears prick up because most of them have been on a dieting journey and they resonate with your message straight away. And then you can say, well, look, to actually form habits and lose weight long-term and prevent your body fighting itself, you need to be following these evidence-based steps, and you can be breaking it down into 6 steps. And again, there's lots of resources online you can download for free. Even the PDF, the simple PDF on the 6 steps of the interval weight loss plan, where it's telling people what they should be doing. And
can we go over the 6 steps?
Yeah, definitely.
Can we just touch on the 6? Because I know somebody's driving the car at the moment and they're going, I've heard you mention 6 steps 4 times now. Tyson, you do not ask what the 6 steps are. You're going to get an abusive email. So what are the 6 steps?
Okay, so if we think about health and weight, it comes down to so many different things. It's sleep, it's activity, it's our comfort and emotional eating. It's knowing what to put into our body. So those steps are encompassing all of that. So when we look at, firstly, the science behind weight loss, remember, if you just continuously lose weight, after about 3 kilos, you start to see that V-shaped response where your body fights the weight loss and you go back and you end up heavier. Okay. Now, the first, and you do that over and over again, down, up, down, up, down, up. And we do that 5 times a year. So the line ends up looking like that. But we only ever focus on the down, don't we? We go out and celebrate with our friends and family and we're, woohoo, I've lost 20 kilos. 6 months later, Paul's put 22 back on and Joanne's, regain all the weight she lost on her diet as well. So look, we're not interested in these short-term wins on the latest and greatest diets. We are only interested in patients' health years down the track.
Yeah.
So the first principle is called you can't fight evolution. So when you are prescribing the interval weight loss program, basically a person is allowed to lose about 12 kilos a year. And that's because they can lose approximately 2 kilos every second month. Why 2 kilos? Because that is what is considered clinically significant. Any more than that 2 to 3 kilo weight loss, and that is when your body will go into shutdown mode. You will see the decrease in metabolism, the change in appetite hormones telling you to eat more.
And what you're describing, that's what happens with me, is because, and I jokingly say, I'm about to go on a holiday, for example, and I will say, I'm like an Olympic swimmer. I taper for the event. So I can lose 5 to 8 kilos in a matter of 5 or 6 weeks really easily. Just bang, 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 just lose it. When I come back from the holiday, everyone will say, how was your holiday? And I go, oh, it must have been good because I put on 6 kilos. And I can put it all back on within that first week of the holiday, just smash it out. But I must admit, I do enjoy myself at the same time while I'm doing it. But I'm definitely that up and down weight. The other question I just wanted to ask about that is I do Muay Thai. So a lot of the guys that we train with who are also fighting, when they're leading up to an event, they will lose a dramatic amount of weight in a really short period of time, to the point where sometimes I just think it's unhealthy.
Yeah.
Just so they can make weight for a particular lighter weight category to fight. And then they can put on 3 or 4 kilos within 24 hours straight after that, because they do the weigh-in 1 or 2 days before the event. That obviously can't be good for you either. Just that dramatic weight loss.
It's the same. And this is why athletes struggle long-term with their weight too, particularly those that are making weight for sport.
Yeah.
So there's plenty of sports where we're making weight, and, you know, it can be even more of a pressure with females. But like you just explained, if you've got to make weight, your body will fight the weight loss. It will claw back. And the more you do that, the more you muck up your metabolism. The more you muck up your thyroid function. You're actually disturbing the equilibrium in your body, your physiology. This is what we want to prevent, and that's why dieting is bad.
Yeah, and I've heard some fighters too, long term, when they say as they get older, they go up a weight division, because they said they can't fight that weight loss and weight gain. They've actually lost the battle, so they go up a division, and then they just repeat the process. So over their career, they can go up 3 weight divisions because they can't get back to where they were.
That's exactly right. Again, there's some fascinating research on weight cycling in sport, and athletes do see that acceleration of their weight over time. When they retire, they find it even harder, and they often struggle with their weight for the rest of their life. So,
and a lot of people probably think it's got to do, that athlete put weight on because they're just not training as much anymore, which could be part of it. But they've been going through that cycle of weight loss, weight gain, and then they're losing.
Exactly. They've mucked up their body. They've mucked up their equilibrium, their physiology, their metabolism, thyroid, adrenal gland function. All of those biological protections are being disturbed with intentional weight loss and dieting. So even if you're seeing athletes and treating them, when it comes to podiatry, it's the same thing. If they need to make weight, you've got to be able to guide them towards evidence-based care. And this is why IWL, interval weight loss, again, comes into play. So I guess going back to that point of explanation, it's
I
2
actually
kilos.
interrupted you. You got
No.
on the first point, and I dove.
Talking about athletes is very important. It's very relevant, and you're exactly right. Weight cycling for them is just as hard. They will experience long-term pain. So when we talk about the first one, you can't fight evolution. You've got to lose, a couple of kilos. Then you've got to actually maintain the weight for the next month. So it's a flat line. Then you've got to go on and lose again. So it looks like a stepped pyramid, like this: down, across, down, across, down, across. So weight loss followed by weight maintenance.
So you lose a certain amount, and then your goal is stay on that weight for a certain period of time. Do not go up, do not go down. Just got to maintain it
within a 1 kilo range. I mean, picture perfect. Weight is never picture perfect.
Yeah.
So we say roughly 2 kilos. Some people might lose 2.5. Some might lose 1.5. But then the next month you keep it within a kilo. Then you go on and lose another couple of kilos. Then you keep it within a kilo. It allows a person to lose roughly 12 kilos over the year by that method. Now, that is good in the sense that, remember, with those periods of maintenance, it prevents the decrease in metabolism and the increase in appetite hormones. So you're recalibrating your body's set point at intervals along the way. So you start at 90, you lose a couple, 88, and you maintain that. Your body then reprograms at 88. If you kept
when you're reprogramming at 88, though, is that then a new balance between what you're putting into your body and what you're expelling through exercise? Is it finding that balance between the two? How do you get that maintenance?
Yeah, so I'll tap into that with these other 5, because that's a key part of it. So with that I guess on off, it's typically hard for patients because they say, well, 12 kilos over a year, I need to lose the 12 now. So that's why they follow the drastic diet, or whatever it might be, lose the 12 and then put 13 or 14 back on just as quick. So you've really got to be
watermelon diet.
Yeah, that's it. You've got to be able to iterate that in a year's time, you're going to be 12 kilos lighter, roughly. And importantly, not have your body fighting that weight loss. That's the most important thing. We're preventing the whole physiology from disruption. And what you're doing is monitoring the weight. So you're jumping on the scales once a week, same time, same day, and you're just monitoring that trend over time. Now, with these other 5 principles, which I'll explain, 5 steps, this is how it allows you to do that. But again, look, I might jump on the scales one week, I'm 90, the next week it's 88.7, the next week it's 88.5, 88.2. That trend is showing you down over time. Yeah. If it went 90, then 89.8, and then 90.2, that is not weight loss followed by weight increase. That is just equilibrium. That's just your normal body reaction. But you're monitoring the trend over time. That's the most important thing. So you will see, this rough picture like that with a trend line going like that over the 12 months, maybe 24, 36, depending on how many kilos a person needs to lose. So some people only have to lose a few kilos, others need to lose 50 plus kilos. But it's not something that you just follow and then it leaves you in the lurch. You continue to follow these principles. Now, how do you do it? Well,
so before you get into that, so like you said, if someone wanted to lose 50 kilos, it's the 12 kilos every year. Now let's do this, repeat this 4 years.
Yeah, that's right.
48 kilos and maintain that weight loss instead of losing 30 kilos in 6 months, yahooing, and then 6 months later, you may have put the weight back on again.
Yeah, because those, well, maybe not in 6 months, sometimes quicker, sometimes longer. It might take a few years to put it back on. But 4 years later, that person who had been on the drastic 30 kilo decrease will definitely be heavier than the person that's on this trajectory of losing, say, the 10 to 12 kilos every year towards their 50 kilo goal.
Yeah, I was told originally that weight gain was related to marriage. So somebody said from the time you get married, you'll put a kilo on a year every year that you're married if you don't watch what you're doing. And then I looked at how many years I've been married and what weight I was when I got married. And I went, yep, I've put on 20 kilos since I've been married. Yeah. But there's so many other factors. Sorry.
There are. There's so many
again.
Kids, children, change in job and seniority. There's so many different triggers that can see a person's weight go up because they stop prioritizing their health. They stop getting outdoors and focusing on activity or prioritizing and planning their meals. They let that go down the bottom of the priority pile. They often put everything else first, and that might be their children, their job, their partner, etc. So when it comes down to it, we always have to prioritize our health. Without your health, you have nothing. Okay. And that is, I guess, a key message of this as well. So you've got the sort of don't diet. Everyone should know that now because we're only mucking up our equilibrium, body's physiology. But secondly, that health is a priority. And then thirdly, you can do it through these steps. Now, the other thing we talked about is, remember, in the modern day environment, one of the reasons why we're seeing the weight increase is, could be stress. It could just be the fact that there's food on every corner of every block, but we emotional and comfort eat all the time. Yeah. We don't just sit down and eat one Tim Tam. We might have the whole packet.
I thought that was the only way you ate Tim Tams.
Well, it is.
People actually eat one. That's just amazing. Plus, my wife's Italian. So, so you just, you're going to get good food and you get a lot of it if you want it, if you want to eat it. Yes. And that's something we've got to be aware of. So the other thing with weight loss programs is they're prescribing these sort of cute, neatly packaged programs telling us how many calories to eat, how many grams of food to weigh out. It's deprivation, calorie restriction to get you into a weight loss phase. Not sustainable, body shuts down. But we know it's much simpler than that. So one of the other key steps is actually eating from big to small throughout the day. So breakfast should be your biggest meal, lunch your second biggest meal, and dinner your smallest meal. So you're talking about your wife that cooks this beautiful Italian food. I can tell you in the Mediterranean lifestyle way of eating is they typically sit down to a balanced meal. It'll be your pasta, your whole grain carbohydrate, your protein, maybe your meat or your fish, but then a big salad. Always. If we go out for dinner somewhere and we'll be ordering something, my wife will say, "Oh, and a salad." Yeah. What do you need a salad for? She goes, "I just feel better when I have the salad." And every meal we have, no matter what it is we're eating, you've always got, and the salad that they make is always 3 times more than what we actually need, but that's what we all fill up on.
Yes, exactly. And that's what we're getting wrong as part of our culture. We're eating basically nothing in the morning. We run out the door, get the coffee, and our food intake increases throughout the day. Dinner becomes the biggest meal of the day. So this second principle is basically saying eat breakfast as your biggest meal, dinner is your smallest meal, and we refer to it as use chopsticks. Sit down to a small bread and butter sized plate, a rice sized bowl. Use a utensil you're not comfortable with. It could be an oyster fork, it could be chopsticks, it could be a teaspoon, to slow down your food consumption and appreciate the hunger signals being sent from your stomach to your brain to tell you you're full. But if you don't put more food at the start of the day and eat at the start of the day and taper off, you'll always be hungry at the end of the day. So this is something, again, that takes time for people to get used to. It takes, we know, 66 days, more than 2 months for that habit to change. But it's slowly introducing more food at the start of the day, tapering off. Dinner is the most important from the social and cultural perspective, but the least important from portion size. We burn the calories 2.5 times more efficiently in the morning compared to the evening time.
So that whole saying about, oh, have a good breakfast, it's the most important meal of the day, which used to then became an old wives' tale, is actually what you're saying from your research is true. The big breakfast is actually a better start to the day.
If you sit down to 2 identical meals, have one of them at breakfast, one at dinner, you will burn the calories. The thermic effect of that food, how much energy you're burning, is 2.5 times quicker at the morning time compared to the dinner time. You just store it as fat in the evening time. Look, we're not saying cut any meals out. You're still eating. This is not intermittent fasting. You're eating from big to small throughout the day, enjoying all food, and making sure that evening portion is small, and then going back for more salad, more vegetables if you want to.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that, because when we travel, a lot of times when we've traveled overseas, we will wait, and you're in a motel that will have a buffet breakfast. We will normally have a massive breakfast because it's all you can eat. But then we will probably,
as you do.
Yeah, as you do. Then we'll probably have quite a large lunch, midway through the day. But normally by the time it gets to nighttime, rarely do we eat too much, because we'll actually say, I'm not really that hungry. So we will have something smaller. So it's funny that when we do travel overseas, I don't usually put weight on. It's only when I'm traveling just locally, family and friends, and you're staying with them, that I tend to eat more, because you're given, it's probably just that pattern of eating is different. We're given that big meal at night and it's forced upon you.
Yeah, it's just part of our culture. It's what most of us do, but it's the wrong way around. And this is a key part, a key step in the plan. Eat big to small. A rough guide of 3 fists, closed fists at breakfast, 2 at lunch.
Not big hands. Yep.
Big hands. But that's luck. That's good, because it sort of accounts for the male versus the female, and a bigger individual versus a small. And then 1 for dinner. And this doesn't include the salad and vegetables, which you can keep going back for. And it ties into
salad and vegetables. Do you remember there was a guy, Dr. Tickell?
Tickell.
Oh, he was doing the
refresh my mind.
Can't remember his first name. It's Dr. Tickell, and he said there were certain things you can never get too much of: vegetables, salad, fish, and sex. He said you can have as much of that all day, every day, and it's going to be good for you. And then somebody had actually asked him about smoking. Yeah, should you smoke? He said, well, if you got the choice to smoke and not smoke, he said, I'd probably choose not smoking. He said, however, if you're having 2 cigarettes a day and you live in a nice country area with fresh air, he said, your lungs are probably about the same as someone who's living in Sydney who works in the city all day.
Well, the longevity of those Mediterranean countries, I mean, they have some of the longest lifespans in the globe. We know a large part of it's diet, but it's also social connection and other factors you're describing. So, where we live. But tying back to, that point we're making, look, you've got to be able to encourage patients, and even from our own perspective of eating big to small throughout the day. And I encourage everyone to try this, because it's going to take time, but over time, you will start to feel better for it. You will start to wake up hungry.
Yeah.
I'm going to check in with you, Tyson, and see how you're going.
No, definitely do that, because it is one of those things that I know when all of a sudden I've been going, oh, I need to lose a couple of kilos. I skip, because I've seen things where you skip the morning, fast for a little bit longer, and then instead of having lunch, have more like brunch, breakfast and lunch together, and then don't eat anything again till dinner. But by the time it gets to dinner time, I'm so hungry.
Mm.
I'm
And then
going
you eat
back
the whole
for the
packet of Tim Tams too.
Yeah, I'm going back for the second bowl of pasta. Yeah, so it actually like I said, it makes total sense. So was that point number 2 going from small to big?
Yeah, that's
from
right.
big
And
from big to small. Sorry,
big to small, big to small. Small to big at the moment. We're going to change it from big to small. And it's the used chopsticks. Remember, we used in a utensil, something uncomfortable at the end of the day, just to slow us down.
Just point out to everybody, if you're flicking through this podcast, anytime you hear my voice, just skip it and just listen to Nick. That's where all the intelligent stuff is coming from. Okay,
I'm talking too much. So the next one, we're talking about food at the moment. So another key part of that is what we should be putting into our body. Okay, you just described a classic scenario where we sort of, skip meals. We think it's good, it will save the calories, but all that ends up happening is we get hungry. Ghrelin levels, an appetite hormone released from the stomach, acts on our brain, telling us to eat food. That's that hunger pang that you get. That's ghrelin screaming at you saying, eat, eat. But what do? You reach for the comfort foods. You reach for anything you can get your hands on. Again, that's due to evolution. We sought out those foods when they became available, the high sugar, high fat. And we tend to do it with the processed and fast foods in the modern day environment, or the vending machine, whatever it might be. So it's about eating frequently, big to small, but also have your morning and afternoon tea, because we want to prevent hunger creeping in. Someone struggling with their weight, telling themselves to skip a meal, deprive themselves, will only end up in overeating at the next meal and poorer food choices. So we call it full rainbow. We also say every meal should have a whole grain carb. Good example is breakfast. It might be your oats. It also should have a source of protein. It could be a dairy, say, some yogurt on there. And it should have a source of good fat, and that could be some nuts and seeds. So every meal needs to be balanced. Cutting out food groups is not the answer. A lot of these food groups we're sort of demonizing are the very ones we should be putting on the plate. Whole grain carbs, dairy, etc. They don't cause weight gain. They're the ones that actually help you on your weight loss journey. They're packed full of fiber, vitamins, and minerals, and they're also important for long-term health. They prevent the diabetes, the heart disease, etc.
Can I ask a question? Where's bacon fit in?
Ah, the bacon.
Yeah, where's bacon? Because everyone knows everything tastes better with bacon.
Yeah, true. Yeah, it fits in with the eggs. Believe it or not, eggs are good.
Yeah, I love eggs. Yes.
They're fine, but we can't have it with the bacon every day. Anything that's sort of gone through some sort of processing, packaging, you need to think of them as the treat foods. Have them once a week during your weight loss month.
Okay.
And during the weight maintenance month, you can have them twice a week. So we're not cutting anything out. Okay. Everything's fitting into this IWL plan, but in a way that is good for our health and sustainable.
Yeah. So having eggs on toast instead of yogurt and all that is a fine meal for breakfast.
Definitely. So you would have probably your eggs. You'd probably cook them, fry them, whatever it might be, olive oil, have some whole grain toast, and you might put some avocado on there, and that's going to complement that meal. Whole grain carb, protein, and a good fat. That's what we want to breakfast. Do. Balance it out.
It is one of my favorite breakfast. Just what you described then.
And then once a week, we can throw the bacon.
And you put the bacon on, it makes it even better.
Exactly. And it's big. Remember, big breakfast. So you might even have 2 small breakfasts, lunch, and then dinner. So that's the full rainbow. That's the third one. We're educating patients on what to put on the plate, and that you can keep going back for unlimited salad and vegetables whenever you feel hungry, including that dinner time. Now, our next big part of the food equation is, as we alluded to just before, the emotional comfort eating. Now, again, remember, our ancestors used to hunter-gatherer for foods high in sugar, high in fat, because they're the ones that give us a lot of calories. We would gorge on them and we would store that energy. So they used to do it for the nuts, the honey, all of those foods naturally high in sugar and fat. In the modern day environment, we're doing it for the foods with added sugar and added fat. So we go to the processed packaged food aisle, or we go to the fast food restaurant. So we're retraining the brain with the fourth one called reach for nature first. So every time you feel that desire to eat something sugary or fatty, you need to go for something that's a food high in sugar, high in fat, but naturally occurring. And that might be fruit. That might be the honey. That might be the nuts and seeds or the avocado.
Or just grabbing a banana.
Grabbing a banana. That's right. They're going to give you the same feel-good response in the brain as the processed food that has added sugar. So don't think that those foods that have naturally occurring sugars and fats are bad for us. You know, again, we demonize fruits. They're the very foods we need to be reaching for. So whenever you feel the urge to eat something sugary or fatty, tell yourself, reach for nature first. Go for the fruits. Go for the nuts and seeds, etc.
And we're lucky,
you can retrain
we're
your
lucky
brain.
in the tropics. We have mangoes and bananas, and yeah. So it's great.
And this time of the year, I mean, fruits in season, we have a plethora of choice here. We're very, very lucky. So it's something, look, again, the brain it has a wiring, and this neuron connectivity is obviously something we can change over time. So instead of defaulting towards the processed and packaged foods, we're trying to change that wiring, and we are changing it because it's soft wiring towards the nature's treats.
Can you eat too much of nature's treats? So you have say for example, you woke up, you had 2 pieces of toast, 2 poached eggs with some avocado, great breakfast. And you get midway through the morning and you feel a bit hungry. So you sit down and you eat half a kilo of cherries, because once you have one cherry, it's really hard to stop on just a handful.
Yeah, look, believe it or not, you can't, because we don't eat enough fruit and vegetables or nature's treats. We just neglect them. Instead, we go for the chocolate bars and the lollies, etc. So it's much better to go for something it's in its naturally occurring form. Look, it's always good to portion out what you're going to have. Otherwise, it's very easy to eat the whole bag of nuts. So get out a handful, put it into a bowl, and that is your snack. Force yourself to have to go and get more if you really need them.
Yeah. What about I'll just throw in another question just while it's on mind. When people may make a protein shake, for example, so they'll throw some ice in, some banana, a couple of scoops of protein powder, some peanut butter, bang, blend that all up. Tastes fantastic. Where's that fit in on the scheme of things?
Yeah, look, for someone trying to lose weight, there's no reason why they should be making these shakes or having shakes, because whenever we have something in its blended form, smoothies are a good example, juice, we tend to be losing a lot of the nutrition. You know, you might lose the skin, the insoluble fiber from the fruit, but then you're adding, say, 8 times the calories. So look, a convenient on-the-go option, sure, you might have a protein shake, but that is not the answer for weight loss. We don't need to be following high protein diets. Every meal needs to be balanced. It should have, remember, the carb, the protein, and the fat source.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, it might be a go-to option as you're running out the door for breakfast, better than having nothing. Definitely. Okay. But in that case, you know, there's other options too. You could be running out the door with.
Okay, let's get back onto our patients and the next step, or for the podiatrist for the next step.
Yeah, so look, you've got 2 left. One's activity. It's about getting them out, slowly moving, choose to move. It's not necessarily going to a gym and following structured regimen routines and seeing them get injured. You've got to help your patient long-term with injury prevention. And to do that from a weight management perspective, look, using activity monitors, seeing how many steps they're doing. Most of the time we're doing less than 6,000 steps. You've got to be able to get that up. And if they're carrying a lot of weight, it might mean using non-body weight bearing machines, exercises like bike, rower, pull, and then gradually building it up over time during the weight loss months, mixing it up, changing the intensities, changing the varieties. Just like an athlete, you can't prescribe the same program, their performance will plateau. Same with weight loss. You need to change it up so that weight loss doesn't plateau over time. And then the very last one is sleep. I mean, we say no blue light after twilight. Very simple in that, you know, we're staying up all night. We're addicted to the devices, the technology, and they're actually emitting blue light, disrupting our circadian rhythm, telling us it's night time. So daytime instead of nighttime. So we have a very hard time falling asleep and then staying asleep. So No blue light after twilight just means disrupting your evening routine. Your patient should be doing something different, getting away from the TV, the phone, maybe engaging in a hobby or something else, and having a block of time before bed, at least an hour, preferably 2 hours, where they have no screen time. That's going to allow their circadian rhythm and melatonin production to get them into a state where they are aware of the fact that it's nighttime, and their brain is aware of that fact, so they can go to sleep and stay asleep. It's a very important part of its sleep when it comes to weight management.
We've probably all heard that so many times before about not doing something a couple of hours before you go to sleep.
Yeah.
But it's actually really, really hard.
Yeah.
Also to just tune out from devices and everything for at least an hour before you go to bed.
Very hard. I mean, look, you've got to try and consciously put it away. If you're in your bedroom, you should have it on charge out in a different room. But look, revert to the old school, reading, do a hobby, play some music, help your kids with the home, whatever it might be, just something different to get you away from technology. Every time you're looking at it, you got to remember, you're telling your brain it's daytime, and you're going to have a very hard time falling asleep. And even if you do fall asleep, you're then going to wake up. You're going to have a disrupted sleep pattern. It's going to be very poor sleep quality. We know that poor sleep health results in poorer lifestyle choices. You're sleep deprived. You go for what you think is the easier option. You run to the corner store, sleep vending machine, etc.
That is awesome advice, especially that last one about turning the screens off, because I have a terrible habit of, because with Netflix and all that, there's always something to watch. There's never nothing to watch on TV.
Very true.
Then after that, you might watch a movie or something, and then before you get to bed, you've pulled out your phone and you're just checking any messages you were supposed to get to, checking your diary, reminding yourself what to do, and then you put it next to the bed on the charger, and then you go to sleep. And then I only wake up about 3 or 4 times a night.
You shouldn't be waking up.
I know. So that's actually really got me thinking that, and I do sometimes I find it hard to switch the brain off.
Yes.
And regardless of what time I go to bed, I'm still going to wake up just after 5 o'clock anyway. So there are some days you're actually tired, and then that does lead on to poor choices throughout the day with what you choose to do, what you don't do, and also your eating.
Definitely. This is why it is, again, one of those key principles, key steps. It's a very easy one. Just disrupt your evening routine. Do something different.
So if people want to get hold of a copy of your book, where's the best place to get it from? I know I will put links in the show notes. If anybody is interested.
You will find it everywhere online. You remember that old phrase they used to say, at good bookstores? What is a good bookstore? It's at all bookstores.
Yeah. Yeah. Any bookstore that's still around, it'll be there.
Exactly. And look, it's at libraries. A lot of patients, just send them to the library, get them reading. That is the most important thing. Get them educated. If you can have a couple of copies in your practice or a copy on a stand, great. It's a good talking point, again, for your patient that comes in. You can bring it up in a light, educational way that's not discriminating and saying, hey, you need to lose weight. That's not what you want to do. You're not going to achieve anything with that.
No, Nick, I think this has been absolutely fantastic advice. And I do recommend everyone getting a copy of the book, having a read through it, and getting a better understanding of those 6 steps that you spoke about. Like I said, even if you get your patients following 2 out of 6 or 3 out of 6 is better than them not following anything. And sometimes I know people feel, I've got to do everything 100% or I just won't do it. To me, I'm like, if you do it 50%, it's better than not doing anything at all. So at least it's a start. And you might find some of those 6 steps, some are easier to do than others. So it's not have to do them in any particular order. They're just 6 steps.
Yeah.
Pick which ones work.
Yeah, and start with one, and then after the 66 days, you might move on to the next, et cetera, et cetera. It can be a bit overwhelming to try and tackle all at once. And some you might already have a good grip of, or your patients have a good understanding of, and you might need to focus on other ones. So it really depends on, what sort of stage you're at. And the other thing I will say is, look, there is the third book called Interval Weight Loss for Women. That is probably the most in-depth one because that does tackle those 6 steps in detail. And even though it's for women, it's for everyone. The only difference is it's tackling, you know, some of those specific issues like pregnancy and menopause that women go through that us men don't. So as a starting point, I'd probably say go to the Interval Weight Loss for Women book with the green cover.
Okay. And the one that you held up, that one?
That's also Interval Weight Loss for Life. So obviously you're getting the same program, but just articulated and in different, or tackling different components of the science and the program.
Yeah, because I have read other books before, and a lot of them will talk about the food and they'll talk about the activity. One that comes to mind, I think it was called Body for Life. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. And it was probably 10, 15 years ago. And it was really big at the time when it came out. But a lot of that too was also putting in protein shakes and things in between. So I like what you said, that you don't necessarily need to be doing that if you're eating big to small.
Yes, exactly. It's much simpler than that. Don't make it hard. We've overcomplicated it. Food is simple. Lifestyle's simple, but health has to be the priority.
That's a good point. So, Nick, before we finish up, have you got one final point that you want to share with them before we finish? Or are you like, I've told you everything I know? I'm sure there's more.
Well, look, there's so much. I'm so passionate about this. I could talk about it all day. I've talked a lot already. We've gone on for a long time. But just look, education, because you have the ability to be able to educate your patient or your colleague or your friend, whoever it might be struggling with weight, and you can equip them with that information. It will resonate with them because most of us are struggling with our weight. So do that, just educate, and they will feel informed and empowered.
I think that's a great way to finish. So, Dr. Nick, thank you very much for coming on the Podiatry Legends podcast, sharing all your knowledge with us. And I'm sure we'll talk again very soon.
Thanks, Tyson. That's been an absolute pleasure being on, and you're a legend yourself.
Okay, thanks a lot.